Progressivism is a societal cancer. Oh, hi there. Welcome to the Freedom Alternative. A while ago, I uploaded a video in which I thoroughly argued against the project of allowing Turkish funds to be used for erecting one of the biggest mosques in Europe in Bucharest. You can watch the video here. One of my arguments was that Turkey is no longer Kemal Ataturk's secular nation, but a nation that is slowly being transformed back into an Islamic hellhole and a nation led by an administration that subscribes to a neo-Ottomanist ideology. Besides the butthurt Muslim apologetics, I also got some decent questions on that video and also some statements of amazement in the sense that how could this be? How could Turkey turn its back to civilization and move towards fundamentalism after over 90 years of benefiting from being a civilized nation? These are legitimate questions, and as I was doing research for a video to shed light on the topic, I found an article that did just that. So I asked for the author's permission to translate his work and bring it to you. Now, I cut a few paragraphs from it because it's really long, but I kept the essence. So we'll read from Bogdan Kalihari's article, "The Milli Gorus Brotherhood Builds Its Mosque and Islamic University in Bucharest." Bogdan Kalihari is a 61-year-old author, columnist for the publication În Linie Dreaptă, and I think his article explains eloquently why one should not trust the current administration in Turkey. So, there we go. Mustafa Kemal told the Turks, "Let us throw the fez that sits on our heads as a symbol of ignorance and fanaticism, and let us instead wear the hat, the symbol of the civilized world. Let us show that there is no difference between our mentality and the modern people's." In order to show that he is not limited to rhetorical exercises meant to attract the attention of the civilized world, Ataturk then moved on to abolish the Sultanate in 1922, proclaim the Republic in 1923, and abolish the Caliphate in 1924. He then moved on to dismantle the religious schools and ban the medieval Sharia law, which he replaced with the Swiss Civil Code, the Italian Penal Code, and the German Commercial Code. Ataturk was thus turning his back to 6 centuries of Islam-dominated Ottoman history and thought he was destroying the religious fundamentalism on which the strongest Muslim state in history till that time had been built. Thanks to the Kemalist reforms, Turkey became, according to the 1924 constitution, a state in which religion was totally separated from the government following the secularist principle that had been embedded since the 1937 constitution. Mustafa Kemal then further on encouraged the abolition of sexual segregation and granted female suffrage in 1934. Notice that this happened 10 years before Charles de Gaulle did the same in France. On January 31st, 1997, Bekir Yildiz, mayor of the city Sincan and prominent member of the Islamist party Refah, organized in Ankara a conference called An Evening for Jerusalem. He wanted to draw the attention of Necmettin Erbakan, the leader of Refah, and the prime minister. The auditorium of the conference hall was covered by a green flag on which it was written Allah with Arabic letters, and on the back of the wall there was a huge photo of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, framed by the portraits of the leaders of Hezbollah and Hamas. In the hall, the women were separated from men. In front of the huge audience and in the presence of the honorable guest, Iran's ambassador to Turkey, Bekir Yildiz held a fulminating speech in which he pleaded for the installation of the Sharia law. The Turkish army, which is the guarantor of the constitution and the state secularism, came swiftly. On February 4th, whilst the tank parade was occurring in the city, Bekir Yildiz was charged with incitement to hatred and apologetics for a terrorist organization, as well as violating the Article 312 from the Turkish Criminal Code, namely the article dealing with attempts to undermine the secular republic. Yildiz was thus liable to serve up to 5 years in jail. Iran's ambassador was swiftly declared persona non grata and expelled. Hundreds of private Quranic schools were shut down and students sent home. On February 28, 1997, the National Security Council, controlled by the military, presented to the Prime Minister Necmettin Erbakan a list of 18 anti-Islamic measures that needed to be urgently implemented. The Turkish generals pressured the leaders of the Right Path Party, which was a governing partner to the Islamists from Refah, for them to leave the government. The Islamist prime minister was compelled to resign. On January 1998, the Constitutional Court banned the Refaq party, accusing them of being a center of activities that defy the secular principles of the Republic. Necmettin Erbakan, Bekir Ildiz, and a few other members of the parliament were banned from political activity for 5 years. So how did we get here? How was it possible to have the central plaza of Sincan right in front of Mustafa Kemal's statue to have an Islamist symbols? It all started from Necmettin Erbakan and the Milli Gorus Brotherhood. Turkey could not have Hassan al-Banna and his Muslim Brotherhood like Egypt had, but it did have Necmettin Erbakan and his creation Milli Gorus. Erbakan created Milli Gorus, which means the National Religious Path, in 1969, which is the moment of inception for political Islam in modern Turkey's political stage. The political program of the National Path stated, quote, "Each member of the National Path must be engaged in jihad on the path drawn by Allah. For jihad is not accomplished with wealth and life. Every member of the path must first and foremost turn his full attention to Allah and be ready for jihad in any moment." In 1970, Erbakan founded the National Order Party, which was the political wing of the Islamic Brotherhood, a party whose political program was clearly anti-Western and anti-secular. Both Milli Gorus and the National Order were openly arguing for introducing in the schools the work of Islamic thinkers like Al-Ghazali and Ahmed Shirindi, known for their fanatic devotion which they dedicated to opposing the abominable modernity. In 1 year, Milli Gorus formed all the structures it needed across Turkey to allow Necmettin Erbakan to run for office and become a member of the Turkish parliament in 1970. The army's coup d'etat in 1971 temporarily cut the wings of the Islamist Brotherhood and kick-started Erbakan's and his collaborators' exile in Switzerland and Germany. The army, mind you, was, and in theory still is, the guardian of secularism and the guardian of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk's legacy. The West, however, learned nothing, and in the 70s, guided by its pathological tolerance, granted hospitality to the very people that wanted its end. France was hosting in that period none other than Ayatollah Khomeini, the one who said that Islam can't be authentic unless it's political. Khomeini then went on and proved this by installing theocracy in Iran and the rule of Sharia law. The European trip allows Erbakan to infiltrate Milli Gorus in Germany too. After 30 years, in late 1990s, the tentacles of his organization had also touched other countries in Western Europe. In 1999, Milli Gorus had an over 500 mosque network in Germany with over 26,000 members and hundreds of thousands of sympathizers. In 2001, the German government gave Islam the same rights that Christian churches had, thus allowing the Islamists from Milli Gorus to host religious education courses in schools and access generous governmental grants. These amounts of money would then allow Milli Gorus to strengthen its power and influence and add to its mosque network also a media network of religious publications and radio stations. In all this time, the Germans continued to combat with a relentless strength the always contemporary dangers of Nazism. When he came back to Turkey, Necmettin Erbakan founded the National Salvation Party, which had Islam at the center of its political program. It didn't take long, and in 1974 this party became a part of the coalition government. The National Salvation Party got 12% in the elections and 4 important ministerial jobs. Right away, Erbakan used his influence to bring 5,000 imams and other religious thinkers from Milli Gorus into the Presidency for Religious Affairs. After the coup in 1980, the army banned Erbakan and his party from public life. But the ban was lifted following a referendum in 1987 when he became the leader of Refah, or the Prosperity Party. Necmettin Erbakan's convictions were not affected by his exile, nor by the repeated bans that he was subjected to by the secular government, nor by the passing of the years. On May 13, 1991, he said in a speech in the city of Sivas that jihad was the basic pillar of Refah and Milli Gorus. He was also saying to the numerous enthusiastic supporters, quote, "The Refah party is an army. Each and one of us must work his best for this army to grow. Refah is the army of the Islamic war. You can't act individually and say you have your own jihad. Actions conducted without the general headquarters approval mean division. If you want to fight, you fight here. Are you a Muslim? Then you are obligated to be a soldier of this army. And you can't be a Muslim without paying for the jihad. We're all Muslims. We must support Refah because we want jihad. For all those who fight for Refah will go to paradise. Because prosperity means to fight in order to achieve the rule of the Quran's order. End of quote. These were simple and mobilizing words understood by the millions of Turks living in the Anatolian plateau. The call to jihad for prosperity and Quranic order brought a surprising success to Erbakan in 1995 elections. Refah got 21% of the votes and became the largest party in the nation. After he became prime minister in 1996, Erbakan began immediately to get the country closer to the Arab world. Then the Sincan episode that we covered at the beginning of this article followed, and then a new ban. Erbakan was sentenced to 2 years and 4 months in prison. It would seem that the accession of the Turkish Islamism had been stopped permanently, but Erbakan had carefully raised his followers and Milli Gorus was now omnipresent. A shining star amongst his disciples emerged, his name Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Coming from the working class, a devout Muslim and chief of the youth wing of Milli Gorus in Istanbul and the leader of the Refah Istanbul, Erdogan quickly became the leader of the voiceless, namely the masses of devout Muslims in Anatolia, so despised by the Kemalist elites. Erdogan became mayor in 1994, the first Islamist mayor of Istanbul, by promising to erect minarets in the entire city. In 1998, he was sentenced to 4 months in jail for reciting at a rally the subversive lyrics of the nationalist Islamist thinker Ziya Gökalp. Quote, "The mosques are our barracks, the domes our helmets, the minarets our bayonets, and the faithful our soldiers." Alongside with Abdullah Gül, another star of Refah and Milli Gorus, Erdogan founded in 2001 the Party of Justice and Development, the AKP. 1 year later, the new Islamist party won the elections with 34.22% of the votes. The Turkish generals were living in a nightmare. An Islamist party was winning the elections again, and its leaders were everywhere. For the first time in history of the Republican Turkey, the leaders were coming out with their wives who were wearing hijab. Abdullah Gül became a prime minister in 2002, whilst Erdogan was finishing his political suspension sentence, which he had received for promoting Islamism. A new electoral triumph followed for AKP in 2007, and to the desperation of the secularist wing, the president of the republic was elected Abdullah Gül. He then came to the Çankaya Palace with his wife, who was always covered by a veil. He had married her when she was only 14. So now the prime minister was the Islamist Tayyip Erdogan, and his partner, the Islamist Abdullah Gül, was the president of the republic. The nightmare was now getting worse. The Islamists now have had a monopoly on the leadership of the Turkish state. Hundreds of high-ranking military officials were forcefully sent into retirement or arrested and charged with conspiracy against the state. The Turkish army had now lost its political prerogative and was now under the civil powers rule and was left only with the task of combating terrorism and defending the borders. The only force that could guarantee the secular view of Turkey was thus defeated. The great Dutch city of Rotterdam has an Islamic university. It would have been surprising if it didn't. The president of the university is Mr. Ahmet Akgündüz, member of Milli Gorus and great admirer of Tayyip Erdogan. It would have been surprising if he wasn't. This guy formed and still forms most of the Dutch imams, who in their turn also model in the mosques across the Netherlands the brains of Muslims. But don't worry, Mr. Ahmet Akgündüz is a moderate Muslim. He is not a member or sympathizer of the Islamic State or Al-Qaeda. He doesn't blow up anyone and doesn't behead anyone. He only preaches the true Islam, the so-called religion of peace. 2 years ago, during the protests in Turkey against Erdogan, Mr. Ahmet Akgündüz wrote a pamphlet in which he qualified Erdogan's opponents as people who have a Western way of living. Having a Western lifestyle in the view of a moderate Muslim, Milli Gorus style, is something bad. Very bad. The Islamic university that he leads is recognized by the Dutch government as an institute that trains imams. Mr. Ahmet Akgündüz also wrote a pamphlet in which he stated that stoning, i.e. killing people with stones, not stoning Amsterdam style, is absolutely okay. Why? Because, he said, quote, "it's one of the punishments mandated in Islam." Funny he said that. Just like Ahmet Akgündüz, this is the position of the non-moderates too, such as Afghan Talibans, the Islamic State jihadis, the Iranian justice system, or the Saudi justice system. The leader and the professors of the Islamic university that the Turkish government, namely the Milli Gorus wing, will build in Bucharest will think just like that. Just like Necmettin Erbakan, like Bekir Ildiz, like Recep Erdogan, like Sadiq Yakut, or like Ahmet Akgündüz. They can only think like that, as Islam allows. We, the Westerners, or the infidels as the Quran says, think different. We think like Mustafa Kemal used to think. But this no longer matters today. Ignorance and the Islamic fanaticism, the fez and the turban are riding a new wave of popularity. And the wave is coming over all of us. Alright, this was Bogdan Kalihai's article. Now, quite frankly, I just don't have anything to add. The article explains eloquently why Turkey now is more of a liability for NATO and Europe in general, as opposed to the reliable ally that used to be 20 years ago. Islamism has won in Turkey. Kemal's Turkey is dead. The sooner we openly admit that, the better. Can the tide be turned? I don't know. Most young secular Turks that I personally know either emigrated permanently from Turkey or are about to do so. The people with the Kemalist worldview are a minority now in the nation, and in a democracy the force of numbers matters. That's why unfettered democracy is a bad idea. But I'll leave the discussion about democracy for another video. Oh, I'm so going to piss off a lot of people when I'll make the video about democracy. Oh well, I can't please everybody. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe, follow me on Twitter at Freedom Alternate, and consider supporting this channel. Thanks for watching.